Before we open the series of public hearings, you will recall I made the comment that the second item on the agenda, which is item 18-00014, has been pulled and will be brought back to a future agenda. So since we have our council in place and our planning commission in place, let me open a series of public hearings, the joint public hearings between the City Council, City of Pearland, and the Planning and Zoning Commission, City of Pearland. And let me call to order the purpose of the hearing. Item number one is, I'll ask the chairman of the Planning Commission to read into the record the purpose of the hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. This is zone change application number zone 18-00013, a request of Alan Mueller, applicant on behalf of Marilyn Bullard, owner, for approval of amendments to the text within the Midtown at Magnolia Planned Development regarding development of the townhouse tract on approximately 7.443 acres of land. The general location is south and east of property address 7110 Magnolia Road.
That information in the record. Let's move down to item number 2 on our agenda. Application information, case summary, staff report.
Yes, sir. This is an amendment to allow, or regarding the townhouse tract within Midtown at Magnolia. It's within a major node to our future land use plan map, and the proposed use is for front-loaded townhouse development. There was a phone call about just wanting some more information about the project that was received. And then I had one returned notice that was in opposition, and they did not complete the comment portion. For the code conformance table, it's generally in conformance with the comprehensive plan, the thoroughfare plan, unified development code, plating and utilities. Things to point out, there are no structures on that portion of the lot, so everything would conform with unified development code and corridor overlay district, and that the property is already platted within Midtown at Magnolia. Staff recommends approval of the requested text amendment. It meets all of the criteria for approval for a plan development amendment, as noted in this table. This is the future land plan map showing the future, or the major node. This is the existing zoning and aerial map showing the general location of the whole Midtown at Magnolia. The townhouse tract is the larger tract in the middle, just to the east and south of the CVS. And this is the proposed design plan for that tract, showing the front-loaded townhouse development. This completes staff's report.
That completes your report?
Yes, sir.
We're moving in our agenda to item number B, 2B, applicant presentation. Is the applicant here tonight? Oh, there he is. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you, sir. Alan Mueller, 1408 Bent Lake Lane here in Pearland. Excuse me. I'll be brief. Just a little bit of more background. So I was involved and assisted with doing the original PD, I guess two or 3 years ago. Mrs. Bullard, the property owner, is here as well this evening. But the original plan was set up for a specific builder that had a rear-loaded product where the front of the homes would open up onto more of a kind of a central green. And so the PD was set up for that particular builder. That builder never came to fruition, and so the land has sat until this point when we were able to find a new builder. And so the only really significant change is just changing it to allow the front-loaded product with the 25-foot townhome lot, so that, this creates a little bit more of a traditional neighborhood. So we think that's good. Also, the lot count is down from 60 to 44, The original plan had the idea of doing more open space off-site, whereas this keeps more of it on-site. So it's actually a little bit of a decrease in density and just the change from the rear-loaded to the front-loaded product. So that's it.
Thank you. I appreciate that input. For those of you who have not attended a public hearing, joint public hearing before, we are not winding up with a vote on process. We are here to receive the testimony, both from the Planning Commission standpoint and from City Council, since we both will have to make a decision selectively, each of us, at a later time. So we're here to get as much testimony as possible, if for and against it. So item number C, is staff have any wrap-up comments at this point? No wrap-up comments. Okay, moving to item number 3 on our collective agenda, and I'm using the same agenda you have. I'll ask Mayor Pro Tem to present that for our consideration.
Mayor, I have nobody who's specifically asked to speak on this item, but if there's anybody who would like to come and speak on this item, now would be a good opportunity. If you would, please. Not a problem, young lady. Okay. We have Miss Marilyn Bullard. Miss Marilyn, if you'd please give your name and address for the purpose of the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. I'll let you know when you got about 30 seconds left.
Okay, Marilyn Bullard, 24.
Pull the mic down to your height.
Okay, Marilyn Bullard, 2411 Walker Court. This is my land, our family land, since 1954, so I've lived in Pearland that long, and I'm only 30 years old, so it's amazing. But this is a really special piece of property to me, and I know it doesn't mean a thing to most of you, but what I saw was a community, a little village being, just being composed of just maybe a lot of medical people. We've been spending a lot of time at the medical center, and everybody I talk to, the nurses, the doctors, everybody's from Pearland. It just blows my mind. I see a lot of the nurses were single parent, and I thought, what a perfect place for a single parent with kids. They've got 4 schools within a mile. In fact, 2 of them are across the street they could actually walk to, and you've got, just the whole little community. I mean, that is so cute. And everybody could be friends and neighbors, and everybody could get along. And you could have your senior citizens there that have, that want to downscale, and they could be the babysitters of all the single parents. But no, this is a very meaningful piece of property to me, because I want something very special. I don't want just a nothing. I want something special that goes in there. And I think this could be something super special. Thank you. And I want to thank the city council and the mayor, because I think they do an awesome job. And I'm not just saying that. They are really so
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak either for or against this proposed zone change? Anybody else that would like to speak either for or against this proposed zone change? Third and final time, is anybody else would like to speak for either for or against this proposed zone change? Looks like that's it, Mayor.
Moving in our agenda to item number 4, which will give council and planning commissions and staff have an opportunity to make further discussions. Let me start with Councilmember Owens.
Get this mic on. I don't have a problem with what they're trying to do on this property, and Ms. Bullard and I was talking briefly about the beginning of it, of the property there, that the city had to come back. They had 40 acres there, and the city had to come back and take property, put the Magnolia through, and then detention through on that. But I think this would be a good opportunity for some people to move into facilities like this, and this is a good location. And we need the tax money.
Councilmember Owen, more.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'm not the apartment or condo guy, so I'm not always in favor of these things. But this has already been approved to be what it is. I don't have a problem with this this amendment, especially since it drops it from 60 down to 44. That's even better for me. And I trust that Mr. Mueller and Mr. Groman over there will make sure this is a quality-looking development. Hopefully, it doesn't look anything like what's over off Cullen, because that looks terrible. But thank you.
Councilmember Little?
I think it's a good idea, and wish Ms. Bullard good luck with her utopia.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Yeah, I was for it, but now I'm extra for it after that description. You make me want to live there. I think it looks cool, and I mean, now I've got this image of a bunch of, grandpa and grandmas running around taking care of kids and stuff, and it's just, you should be in marketing if you're not. I mean, you're only 30, so you've got your whole career ahead of you. But thanks for this.
Councilmember Perez?
I'm for the change. No additional comments, Mayor.
Councilmember Reed?
Looks good to me, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Carbone?
Looks good, Mayor.
Okay. Staff report, staff discussion?
No additional.
No staff discussion? If I move to item number 5, says adjournment. I'm sorry,
Did you have anything?
Planning Commission, staff. Okay, we've got the Planning Commission coming up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Chairman?
I just think it's a good idea. It's, all we're doing is changing a little bit of the wording in a plan that's already been accepted.
No further comments, Mayor.
That completes your reports.
Hold on, we have one question.
I just wanted to know, I heard them called condos and townhomes. Are they for sale or rent?
I can address that. They'll be for sale, but I mean, once they're sold, I mean, you never know what people are going to do with them, but they will be sold to individuals.
That completes our comments, Mayor.
Okay. Staff have any wrap-up comments at this point? I'll move down to item number 5 now and adjourn at 8:25. And remember that item number 2 has been withdrawn and will be here at a future agenda. Moving to public hearing number 3. Purpose of the hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. This is zone change application number zone 18-00015. Request of Alan Mueller, applicant on behalf of Louis E. Lentz III, Mary Beth Porter, Barbara Brogan, Billy Long, and Brian Long, Francis P. Adams Family Partnership Ltd. owners for approval of a change in the zoning classification from general commercial GC and office professional OP zoning districts to single-family residential 3 R3 zoning district on approximately 35 acres of land. Next page. The general location is north of the intersection of Roy Road and Broadway Street on the west side of Roy Road, immediately north of 2614 Roy Road.
Okay. Moving to item number 1 is application information case summary. Staff report.
So you may remember about a month, 2 months ago, there was a similar application along Roy Road that came to a joint public hearing. Went before Planning and Zoning Commission, and Planning and Zoning Commission said, wouldn't it be really good if we could get the property to the north and the south to be along with the same application? And that is what the applicant went and did, was to try and acquire more properties to combine to rezone as a whole block. That's what this request is for. Unfortunately, one of those tracts had to be removed, making it a 30-acre in total instead of the 35 that was advertised. But just so you know, Tract 5 is not a portion of this request, and when it goes for first reading, that will not be a part of the legal description. I just want to keep it consistent, so that way, if anyone read it from the first publication to now, they understand that Tract 5 is not a portion of it. So, the future land use shows this area as business commercial. and the proposed use for the property is a residential development. We've had a couple phone calls. One of them was not in favor. Two were just for more information. There were 4 return notices and 3 emails, all of which were not in favor. Mr. Chris Shuffler of Pearland Animal Hospital opposed, and he asked that I read some of his comments. He said that he was opposed for the proposed rezoning of the land at 2430 Roy Road for its current business designation to residential. As a landowner that lives on Roy Road, I believe a subdivision of this size would negatively impact my family's ability to safely enter and leave the road due to a lack of a traffic signal. He also believes that the best use of the land along 518 Broadway is commercial development, which would generate more tax dollars, jobs, revenue for the city than a housing development would. Designating the land for residential use would also not be in keeping with the existing land use along FM 518. Cliff Scheffler, who is president of Afton Lakes Property Owners Association, lived on Roy Road from 1976 to 2017, stated that Roy Road was not built to handle the added traffic of 100 additional households would present, and that Afton Lake community is directly adjacent across FM 518 from Roy Road, and Afton Lake traffic is in direct competition with Roy Road traffic to access 518 without benefiting of a traffic signal. It's already difficult and at times frustratingly a time-consuming and dangerous ordeal to enter or cross FM 518, and they asked that those comments be read out tonight. The code conformity table is as shown. In order to get an R3 zone, the future land plan would need to show a medium density residential classification. Roy Road is a major collector to be widened. The existing right-of-way is insufficient at 60 foot currently. The Unified Development Code would require a 10-foot buffer against the non-residential property lines. The property is not platted, and it would need sewer to be extended to the site for the city to be able to provide water, both water and sewer. Water is currently available on Roy Road. Staff does not recommend approval of the requested change in zoning from office, professional, and general commercial to R3 on the approximate 30-acre site for the following reasons, as shown within the table. This is the future land use plan map showing business commercial for the 4 properties. And then this is the zoning and aerial map as it exists today, showing the office, professional, and general commercial. And this completes staff's report.
Okay. Moving to item B on our agenda, applicant. Is the applicant here? Okay. Hey,
Back for more.
hey, I've seen you before.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Alan Mueller, 1408 Bent Lake. Got a lot here. I'm going to try to be as speedy as I can, so bear with me, please. So first of all, I'm going to just make some general comments kind of pertaining to this tract as well as the next tract, and kind of a lot of tracts you're going to see. But, as we know, a lot of the large tracts in Pearland are pretty much all but developed. And so as we go forward, we're going to see more and more of these infill kind of tracts similar to this one. And a lot of those tracts are going to have 2 or 3 things that are in common that affect this tract this evening. The first one being getting into second or third generations of ownership. And so a lot of these families that have these small tracts have owned them for decades. And as you know, the longer it goes, the more people, more heirs that get involved. And so you get those fractional interests and decision making. It just gets harder and harder with every generation, which makes it harder and harder to think that the tract is going to develop at all at some point. The second, thing that comes up a lot with a lot of these tracts, again, is the comprehensive plan, conformance. The future land use plan, we certainly understand that that's important. We respect that. But we also understand that the future land use plan should not be the only factor that you look at when making a zoning decision. There's other factors that play into it. First of all, the future land use plan is a broad brush statement. It's not parcel specific. It's not intended to be parcel specific. It's also not based on any sort of market research. It's colors that are put on a map. It's basically a wish list. It doesn't necessarily have a basis in any kind of market reality. And so what happens, the result is when these two factors come together is over time, we're going to have increasingly complicated ownership, and we're going to have a market for that land that's not consistent with what's shown on the future land use plan. And so for a lot of these families, what you're going to end up with is basically a stranded investment. They can't sell it for what it's zoned for because there's no interest, and so it just sits. One other, excuse me, kind of general comment to make before moving on to the specifics here. If you refer to the city charters, chapter 7.04, I'm going to read it. In part, it says, "The city council shall cooperate in every manner possible with persons interested in the development of property within or beyond the city limits." So that's a pretty strong statement. I've worked in a lot of cities. I've never seen that language in any city charter ever, anywhere. And that, to me, is a pretty good indicator of what the founders of Pearland had in mind in terms of what they saw for the future of the city and what the city's role would be in terms of working with landowners to further develop the development of the city. But specifically on these tracts on Roy Road, we have 3 different ownership groups. 2 of those are already in second-generation ownership. 2 of the tracts are 218 feet wide by 998 feet deep. They're long and skinny, and so they're not going to develop on their own with dimensions like that. And so the only way they're going to develop is when you can aggregate them together in deals like this. As was mentioned, we hope we've overcome one of the objections from the last time through, was we were able to acquire the additional 5 acres to the north, not acquire, but it's under contract, excuse me. And so now this zoning request is an extension of existing zoning. So hopefully that answers some of the spot zoning, concerns that came up. We tried to get additional property going south. Again, that did not work out. But basically, our south line is the north line of the food town. So that's a pretty good logical line in terms of a boundary between residential and commercial. And a lot of these points that I'm going to mention now are outlined in the letter that's in your packet, but Roy Road really is just not a commercial corridor. There are a few small scattered commercial uses that are out there, but anything that's out there developed 30 plus years ago, that was prior to annexation, that was prior to zoning, that was prior to building permits. This area was basically 2 miles outside the outskirts of what was Old Town Pearland. And so the things that are out there are things that you see on the outskirts of any, small town in Texas. And they're not things that would necessarily be replicated in today's environment. And so, but for the presence of those things that are out there, I'm confident that the future land use plan would have shown this area as residential, as it is when you follow the corridor of Broadway along Broadway. There's really no other area that has commercial this deep off of Broadway. And so I think, but for the presence of those few pre-existing uses, this area would be the same. There's already an abundance of vacant commercial property along 518 that's better situated. So there just is not the market to support this amount of commercial uses in the area. The residential uses that are proposed are not intrusive on any of the existing areas that are there. If this were to develop magically as commercial someday, the traffic from a commercial development would be worse than it is from a residential development. But as it is, the residential uses are not going to be intrusive on the owners that are out there. So at the end of the day, the owners of these tracts, they just really need your cooperation, like it says in the charter, to unstrand their investments and allow for some quality residential development in the community. So thank you.
Okay, appreciate that very much. Moving in our agenda to item number C, staff wrap up comments.
No further comments.
No comments, okay. Moving to item number 2, person wishing to speak for or against the proposed request, Councilmember Price.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 people who have submitted a form stating they want to speak on this item. First, Mr. Jimmy Davis. Will come up, please. Welcome back. If you'll please state your name and address for the purpose of the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. I'll let you know when you got 30 seconds left.
Jimmy Davis, 5004 Combs Mill Drive. As much as I'm for an increase in tax revenue, because let's face it, we do need it, I do have to say, as someone that travels up and down 518, who has a child who goes to a medical facility that's right there on Roy Road, I can tell you the traffic getting in and out of 518, or in and out of Roy Road right now on 518 is already extremely difficult. My wife hates it. She actually takes back roads and goes the long way around to avoid pulling out on 518. As much as the tax revenue would be nice, I really think in the interest of public safety and for the future vision of future general commercial and office and professional, I hope the city council will adopt a staff recommendation to not approve this rezoning request. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next person that has filled out a form is Ms. Faye Osmus. You'll come up, please. Ms. Osmus, if you'll please state your name and address for the purpose of the record. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes, and I'll let you know when you got 30 seconds left.
Faye Osmus, 13185 Bluffview Drive, Willis, Texas. I'm here on behalf of the owners of the land. They've had this property for sale for 20 years, and I've marketed this property for quite some time. I've got it on every commercial website you can think of, LoopNet, CoStar, City Feet, Landwatch, Commercial Gateway. I mean, I could go on, and there's not been one person that has even inquired about commercial or business use, not one interest, not one contact, nothing. But numerous builders have called that have interest in developing for homes. So, you know, to me, being in the real estate over 30 years, I think the highest and best use is what it can be used for now, not 5, 10, 20 years from now. So I'd ask you on their behalf to consider allowing this zoning change so that they can enjoy this money for their retirement. They want to speak as well.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. If there's anybody else who would like to speak either for or against this proposed zone change, if you will please state your name and address for the purpose of the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak. I'll let you know when there's 30 seconds left.
Mary Beth Lentz Porter, and this is my brother Louis Lentz, and we are the children of Francis Lentz and Louis Lentz. They bought the property on...
Would you bring the microphone down to your height?
Short person problem.
Thank you.
Our parents bought the property on Roy Road in the mid-60s. At the time, we were only in the county, and it was lovingly called the farm. And so now, once my father passed away, many years later, my mother decided to ensure her financial security, she would sell the farm. So mom's gone now, and we're still trying to sell the farm. It is zoned, obviously, commercial. We want it to be zoned residential so we can have that financial security like our mother wanted in our retirement. Thank you.
Ma'am, could you list your address, please?
I'm sorry. 815 Woodbridge Circle, Sugar Land, Texas.
Thank you, ma'am.
And to reiterate what Ms. Amos said, we've had this property for sale for 20 years, and we've never, many contracts, but nothing commercial, always residential.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anybody else who'd like to either speak for or against?
I'm Louis. I'll put my name in it. My name's Louis Lentz. I was supporting my sister up here.
If you'll state your name and address for the purpose of the record.
Okay, my name is Louis Lentz, and my address is 5119 Briar Bend, Houston, Texas. I just wanted to say that I was up here supporting my sister, and she's the one that talks usually. But we've had this property since the mid-'60s. I mean, we're not investors or anything else. We were a part of the community. In fact, we were a part of the community before that because my uncle and aunt had property on Max Road, and they have subsequently passed away, and their heirs have sold that. But we put this property on the market 20 years ago. Just think about it. That is now going on 3 presidential terms, and we have not been able to sell the property. I get calls every day, or not every day, but once a month or twice a month, from investors all over the country, from California to the East Coast, and they want to know if I want to sell that property. And I say, well, that I have it listed with Ms. Osmus, and they want to do commercial. They want to do residential, I should say, on that property. I have never gotten a call for anything other than residential. And we would really appreciate you allowing us to sell this property and ensure our retirement and maybe make us able to not be a burden on our families. And thank you for your time, and goodbye.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak either for or against this proposed zone change? Anybody else in the audience who'd like to speak either for or against this zone change? Third and final time, anybody else that would like to speak either for or against this zone change? Seems to be it, Mayor.
It completes the persons to speak. Let's move to item 3, which will give the Council Planning Commission and staff the opportunity to do some discussion, starting with the City Council. Councilmember Carbone.
Thank you, Mayor. It's the first time I've heard Alan quote a charter section. So just want to thank you. You're all done with tricks. I guess question for staff. Have we looked at traffic counts or potentially, or is there anything in the future that could trigger a signal for this intersection?
Councilman Carbone, taking a look at that would be one of the things that we would require as development comes through, is taking a look at the traffic counts that they would generate based on development. However, 518 is looking forward to being developed or added to by TxDOT and expanding that. I'd have to take a look at the schematic, but I know that area is not set up for a traffic signal in TxDOT's ultimate configuration.
And in terms of traffic, how's it modeled, I guess, residential versus commercial? Because I hear that the main concerns for the folks on Roy Road is the traffic, but what generates more traffic counts?
Good evening, Councilman. Just real quickly, in general, residential traffic is kept to morning and evening peaks and is generally a lot lower traffic generator than commercial.
All right, anything more specific?
Not without seeing proposed developments.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Reed.
No comment, Mayor.
Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I'd like to say I've known Alan for years as a friend. It's the first time I've ever heard him quote the charter either. It's a pretty neat trick. I would say that the comment would be we are obligated to cooperate. It doesn't necessarily mean we're obligated to automatically approve. We're cooperating. You're here. Yes, sir. And I appreciate it. As I said to Mr. Mueller offline, I do think that this track is appropriate for residential. I do think that there is not a breadth of commercial that goes that deep along 518. But I do think that R3 is maybe a little step further. I think an R1 or an R2 would be appropriate. My biggest concern on the last one was the spot zone. I think it was my specific comment to make it contiguous with the SR12 that's north of it. You've done that. I think if we just do that one bridge further, at least you'll get my vote. And I do, again, I think it's appropriate. For the homeowners, you do have a right to, or for the landowners, you do have a right to sell it. For the people who are affected by the zone change, they do have a right to try and get some value out of the land. We're going to try and work cooperatively to where they can get the value, but y'all can get some protection. And I think maybe an R2 and R1 would be a good balance. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Hernandez.
I'm in line with what Councilmember Perez said. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Little.
Well, I'm leaning toward allowing them to develop the land. Currently, it's generating less than $10,000 a year in tax revenue. I think it would significantly increase the tax base. They've been trying to sell it commercially for many years, and it's just not happening. So I'm leaning toward allowing them to go forward.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pretty torn over this because it seems like it impedes onto stuff that we have set aside for other than residential. And the more that we give up property and change the future plans of the city, I do worry about where we end up on the tax base side of things. Businesses usually carry a heavier burden on the tax and generate more taxes for the city than do residential. So I'm kind of torn on this right now. I think it just kind of encroaches in on a lot of stuff that's already existing there. That's some commercial and office professional stuff that exists already there. And some of those commercial facilities are not of the great aesthetics. Let's put it that way. Because it was out in the county and it never really developed. And I'm kind of torn on this right now, but I do feel for the owners of the property. That you're kind of being held hostage on the property here and can't do anything with it. So. I'm kind of torn right now.
Councilman Owens.
Okay, well, the things that they talked about earlier on commercial versus residential, as far as the signal and the traffic and what have you, I think, if it was commercial and I think, if it was very good commercial, you'd have a lot more traffic in and out all during the day as it is right now. And what's been said, on traffic, it's early morning or late in the afternoon on the traffic. So I don't think that has any bearing on it. But I think, that as far as I'm concerned, I think residential will be the way to go on it. It's been sitting there for a long time and nothing been done on commercial, what have you. So I think the residential, and I'll see if I can get Councilmember Moore off the stick here. I'll work with him. But I think the thing that's been said, that's on the commercial side, I just don't think it exists right there in that area. And I think, like was stated, we don't have any big land masses anymore, so we're looking at smaller areas to develop those, and I think this would be a good area to do that.
Mr. Chairman.
We'll start down here with Mary.
I think that's probably needs to be residential. I don't think you're going to have commercial that far back from 518. If you've been trying to sell a piece of property for 20 years and it hasn't sold for what you want it to be sold for, there has to be a reason. And that reason is that use is not compatible with what people want to use it for.
Ron?
Yeah, I have a couple of issues with this, I guess. I'm a firm believer in cities having a comprehensive plan, going by that plan. And while in one regard, I think the depth of the commercial property is really excessive. I think that over the years, it's just it is what it is because there hadn't really been any absolute control over it. So I think in going out and looking at the property, it would be good if it were residential, but I have a real issue of not complying with the comprehensive plan, and maybe the solution would be to amend the comprehensive plan for that area and not have the commercial be so deep along those roads, and make it to where it opens it up, because if I'm understanding this correctly right now, this is, while it's not bordering on, it's not spot zoning, it's zoned different on three sides than residential, and that's the way I look at it anyway. Thank you.
I think now that the spot zoning issue has kind of been mitigated, although I'd rather see it as an R1, R2 also, I think that, residential may be the best use for this property. Traffic-wise, definitely residential uses are generate much less traffic than what a commercial development would do.
Laney?
I don't like it as an R3, and when I look at it on the map, I don't know it doesn't look that far off of 518 to me. I don't know if you could pull it up again. And I thought somebody said it was even with Food Town, but when I see it, it doesn't look that far off 518 to me. But the R3, I don't like, and staff said no to it didn't meet anything on staff's report, and I'm inclined to say no. Sorry.
Daryl?
Yeah, I agree with Thomas on this. I think that R1 or 2 would be a better fit for it as far as the residential part of it. I do think it makes sense to rezone it. As you're going down Broadway, that is going to eventually be all commercial down through there. But I think having it that deep back into the property, I think that makes no sense, especially when you've got residential at the end of it down there. And, and as far as traffic, like Thomas said, the traffic that the residential generates over what a business would generate is no comparison. So I would be inclined to go for it.
Okay, I have a couple comments or questions as well. If this was zoned R1, R2, would the detention be on-site or off?
Excuse me, it would be on-site detention, and more than likely, because of the shallow road ditches, it would be a pumped system, but it would be an on-site detention system.
Do you have a target number of homes for this development?
Yeah, at R3, we were anticipating in the neighborhood of about 100. At an R1, you'd probably be looking at about 80.
And you say the 5 acres to the north is under contract?
Yes, sir. So what's shown on there is OP. That's 2 5-acre tracts.
Is that a residence?
Yeah. So there's 2. Yeah. The furthest north is a home, single family home, and the one just below that is wooded. And so the gentleman on the far north end. So I misspoke. The wooded tract is under contract. The far north tract is not under contract, but it is included in the application. He agreed to join the application. He intends to sell in about 5 to 6 years, And so if we moved forward, we would set up all of our land planning to be able to incorporate that, but that single-family home wouldn't happen immediately, or that tract with the single-family home would not develop immediately, but this zoning would bring his home into conformance with zoning because he now has a single-family home on a OP-zoned lot. That was a long walk around the block, sorry about that.
It was, and I guess one of the reasons that was given for the sale was because relatives of the original owners, there's multiple people involved there.
Yes,
and
so
now-
the
now we're
large
talking about
tract,
three different.
the 20-acre tract are these folks here. The 5-acre tract that's wooded is actually 3 siblings that live out of state. And then that last tract is one single person.
Okay. So you said in your letter to the commission that y'all would be open to a cluster development or a PD. Maybe you mentioned cluster development, but not PD.
I don't recall saying PD. If I may have said
I think
that.
you said cluster development.
Yeah. I think we would be open to doing the R1, but just, I guess, full disclosure, we'd want everybody to know if we did the R1, we'd probably come back with a cluster plan, but it would still be, the R1 density, approximately 75 to 80 lots.
I'm on the fence for the R. I'm definitely a no on R3. I'm a no on R2. I would probably support R1, knowing that it would come back as a cluster development or a PD.
And we'd be happy to support an R1 if that was something the commission was get behind.
My concern, living in one of these smaller communities, 26 acres, the pump out detention is a concern because that's a burden on the residents, the small number of residents that are going to live there. It's a burden on the city. It's a risk, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And this is the sort of thing that's going to happen more and more. And if there was a solution, a different solution, we would prefer that as well. But there's just not. There's no good outfall, and so that's what you're faced with.
I understand, but you can use more property to gain that detention as well.
Right, and with the cluster plan, you have a little more flexibility to make the pond more of an amenity and make it a little bigger and incorporate some features as opposed to just making it a hole in the back. So it can be a better solution.
The other question I had was for staff: is the future land use plan, is there a change in the works for that area?
Not immediately.
So the property is surrounded by 7 different commercial properties. Just for the record, this would be putting a residential property in the middle of a lot of existing commercial that have been on the books since '89 per the satellite images I looked at. I'm possibly a yes on the R1, definitely a no on the rest. Anyone else have comments? That completes our comments, Mayor.
You complete your turn? Okay. Let's move to staff to report, round up discussion.
I don't think staff has any additional comments.
Have none, okay. Moving in our agenda to item number 4, which lets me adjourn this particular joint public hearing. And let me move then to open a public hearing, joint public hearing of zone change 18-00016. Ask the chairman of the planning commission to read into the record the purpose of the hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request of Alan Mueller, applicant on behalf of Mary A. Bartlett, owner, for approval of change in zoning district from general commercial GC zoning district to single-family residential R3 zoning district on approximately 23.8267 acres of land. This is on the west side of Old Alvin Road, generally across from the lakes at Highland Glen, Section 8.
Complete your report, okay.
Yes, Mayor.
Let's move to next item, which is application information case summary. Staff report, item A.
As stated, this is a request for a zone change from general commercial to R3, single-family residential 3. There was an error in the general location, which described property on the other side of the road. I apologize for that. It is, in fact, on the west side of Old Alvin Road, generally across from the Lakes of Highland Glen, Section 8. The future lane plan shows this area as low-density residential and business commercial, with the proposed use as a residential development. We did have a phone call not in favor and a return notice not in favor and 4 emails. The code conformance table shows as follows. In order for an R3 to match with the comprehensive plan, it would need to be medium density residential. Old Alvin is to be widened. It has sufficient right-of-way, though, so it's a positive. It just hasn't been widened yet. There are no structures on the site, so any structures that get built out there would have to comply with the Unified Development Code. And then there is a landscape buffer required against non-residential property lines. Property would need to be platted. This would be through a preliminary and final plat for the size of the subdivision. And then sewer would need to be extended up to the site. It has access to water. Staff does not recommend approval of the requested change from GC to R3 as shown, but if council were to support a rezoning, then staff recommends a classification of R1 as noted within the staff report. This is the future land plan showing the low density residential and the business commercial. And then this is the zoning map showing general commercial for the property. And that completes staff's report.
That completes your report. Okay, moving it up. Is the applicant here?
One more time.
Oh, you moved in on us, all right?
Alan Mueller, 1408 Bent Lake. I'll be brief, but this has a lot of the same issues as we've been talking about on these other properties. So we're in the second generation of ownership, and that second generation is 91 years old. So we might be on our third generation within the next decade or so, who knows? It's an odd, inefficient piece of property. It's kind of wedged in here. They've marketed it for many years for commercial with no offers and no movement. There's an overabundance of better situated commercial property along Highway 35, and development along Old Alvin in a residential nature would actually help support more commercial along 35 in the long term. And so I'll cut to the quick and tell you that we would agree with an R1 on this one. And that's it.
Good, super, super. Does the staff have any wrap-up comments at this point?
No, sir.
No comments, okay. Moving to the next item, person wishes to speak for or against this request. Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 3 individuals that would like to speak on this item. First, Ms. Elvira Hernandez. If you'll please state your name and address for the purpose of the record. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when 30 seconds is up.
Hi, my name is Elvira Hernandez, and I live at 3431 Highland Point Lane, which is right across the street here in Section 8 of Lakes of Highland Glen. And I just wanted to state that I oppose the R3 zoning of this area. You know, I think that if it's a development that is just like our neighborhood, Lakes of Highland Glen, that I would definitely be in agreement, but anything less I do not agree with. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we have Mr. Aaron Lalonde. You'll please come up and the microphone. Please state your name and address for the purpose of the record. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when 30 seconds is up.
Thank you. My name is Aaron Lalonde at 3433 Highland Point Lane. Excuse me. I also oppose the R3 change on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Last and certainly not least, Ms. Tally Perez. You'll please come and state your name and address for the purpose of record. You feel free to talk as long as you want.
Please.
My name is Tally Perez. I live at 1902 Lazy Hollow Lane, also in the Lakes of Highland Glen. I know there was another item that was taken off today's comments, which was number 2 on the agenda. And fortunately or unfortunately, I'm affected by both zone changes within the 200 yards. I wanted to make one comment about the number of antis, no's on this one, and that is only 10 residents in my neighborhood got notices about this zone change because it only goes to 200 feet, I think, 200 yards, I guess. I don't know. But it's only the 10 houses here along Old Alvin Road got the notice. So you already had 4 or 5 no's over there, and you've had 3 people come up and speak tonight. And I think that's pretty high percentage of the folks involved that do not want R3 zoning there. However, because Mr. Mueller was so nice to concede to R1, I agree that that should be a residential corridor. It absolutely is. There are residences all up and down Old Alvin. There's no reason for it to be commercial. I get that we have a Walmart. I'm happy to see the Walmart disappear, but with some beautiful homes in front of it. That'd be great. But it's definitely a residential community, and it should stay that way. So I'm in favor of not having a general commercial zoning, but not in favor of the R3 zoning. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mayor, I'd just like to comment, I don't think we've had a more attractive or intelligent speaker in the history of City Council. Just for the purpose of the record. Before we close this item, is there anybody else who would like to speak either for or against this zone change? Yes, sir. You'll please state your name and address for the purpose of the record. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes, and I'll let you know in 30 seconds.
My name is Antonio Davila, 1806 Jasmine Hollow Lane in the Lakes of Highland Glen subdivision. My wife and I bought into the Lakes of Highland Glen subdivision 10.5 years ago. It's a home that we feel is our forever home that we're going to stay in for quite some time. We definitely oppose the change to an R3 for all the reasons stated today. One thing to consider as well is a school that is zoned, that this would be zoned to, which is Cockrell Elementary, which currently has a number of portable buildings outside of its location. When a school district looks at rezoning or change in boundary maps, they hire demographers to come out based on your guidelines and your zoning maps to determine what the yield is going to be per residential home and per apartment complex so that they can make plans accordingly. So adding in something with a high yield rate is going to substantially impact the school that we bought our house for. Since it's already crowded with a number of portable buildings that in it, this is going to significantly impact the campus that all of our children reside and are zoned to go to. Pearland ISD has recently rezoned a couple of years ago, so I don't see them going back and rezoning again just because of this particular issue. So it would be a substantial strain on the campus, which means it would be a substantial strain on the students that are going there as well. And so we definitely oppose that. What I can tell you in addition to that is, although you had one call, what I can tell you is I personally know more than one person that has called on this issue, so I don't know what number they are actually reporting to. But I can tell you that our Facebook page, which is a Lakes of Highland Glen Facebook page, had close to 100 comments opposing it within about 4 or 5 hours of this information and news getting out. So we are extremely opposed to it. And we also block vote when we do vote. So thank you.
Thanks, sir. Are there any other members of the audience who would like to come and speak either for or against this proposed zone change? Yes, sir. So please state your name and address for the purpose of the record. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when 30 seconds is up.
My name is Greg Cox. I'm at 1416 Blakely Grove Lane in Lakes Highland Glen as well. And for the same reasons as so concisely been stated just a few minutes ago, I'm opposed for it as well. Just for the zoning, again, We bought into the lakes of Highland Glen for particular areas that we liked. Again, changing that from the ambience that we have currently right now doesn't suit us. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Is any members of the audience that remain that would like to speak either for or against this proposed zone change? Are there any members of the audience that would like to come to the microphone and speak either for or against the zone change? Third and final time, any members of the audience that would like to either speak for or against this zone change? Looks like that's it, Mayor.
That completes the speakers. Okay, moving to item 3, which provide an opportunity for council, planning commission, and staff to make a discussion point, starting with Councilmember Owens.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm wondering, the people that spoke against it, is it spoke against because it's R3, what it said? And Mr. Mueller said they would change to an R1 on there. So I think it's for the development. You got development on either side of it, and then you got the apartments, which I think are lower income apartments on some of them down there. But yet still, I think, should be residential. I don't see where anything commercial, you'd want to have that in there. But I think, to be able to do that, so I'd be in favor of developing that area for residential. And if, Alan, if you're looking at a R1 instead of a R3, you might want to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, this would probably be similar to the Roy Road that we talked about. If we went to the R1, more than likely follow up with a cluster plan. But if you can flip back to the site plan that was just up there, just to give you a comparison. Directly to the north, the yellow rectangle where it says Bosque Drive and Bartlett Way Drive, that's a 20-acre parcel. Ours is 23, so it's about the same size. That's Highland Park. That's a 20-acre R1 cluster plan. So I would envision something very comparable to what that is, which I think we're pretty proud of that. We worked on that one as well. We're pretty proud of that one, and I think this one would be comparable.
More?
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I'm going to contradict myself on this one, going back to the property. I mean, looking at what's around it, I mean, it's predominantly all residential. I think it makes sense for this to be residential. There's not much land on either side of this that would really develop into anything else. I mean, you got residential on the south side of it, you got residential to the west side, you got residential on the north side of it. You got some open lots there between that multifamily development in this, but I think it makes sense for this to be residential, and if it'll be R1, I'll be all for it.
Councilmember Little?
Thank you, Mayor. I think it should be residential also. It's surrounded by residential development, but I can't support an R3. I could support an R1. I think you should name the neighborhood Oklahoma because that's what the track looks like. So.
Get anybody to live there. Councilmember Hernandez?
Thank you, Mayor. Speaking of its shape, that was the only concern that I had is thinking in the future with whatever comes of 35 with any improvements and so forth, it's just that little piece that kind of sticks off to the side and intrudes on what I would otherwise see as a pretty clean line between the commercial and the residential side, but I don't overall have an issue with it, the R1 designation as well. That would be my only concern, and I'm not sure if maybe you could speak as to if there's any possible. Okay, I guess people just want to sell their land. I guess that's that. Yeah. So there's no feasible way to chop that up. I don't know.
Again, that's just the boundary that she has. It's left that way. To the north, there's probably 8 different landowners between this parcel and the multifamily. I think there's about 8 different landowners. We've made attempts. We'll continue to make attempts to try to consolidate that. The property to the south is actually a brother, I think, of this lady, a nephew. So if he'll ever have a reasonable price, then this would all be incorporated together.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Perez?
Thank you, Mayor. As I think people have ascertained, I live in the vicinity of this property. Let me just make a general comment. I know that we've pulled item 2, so we shouldn't talk at length about that. But this and item 2 definitely had some notification issues. I've had a long 2-day conversation with our staff about the notification issues. I'll be frank, I was somewhat disappointed in the amount of errors we had, and I think that there was a lot of room for confusion to our neighborhood about what was being proposed, where it was being proposed, and when it was going to come up to be discussed. So I think city manager knows what I think we need to improve, and I think we'll work on that. So I appreciate him taking my calls and us having that discussion. I also appreciate Alan fielding my calls over the weekend and discussing, getting better information about what y'all are proposing. I've voiced my opinion about this development to him directly, which I'll restate here in just a second. I do want to say the tract is not appropriate for commercial, and the people who own the land do have a right to develop it. So we don't, as landowners, even though I would be directly impacted by this, I don't have a right to tell them, no, it needs to be feral land forever. The only right I would have to that is if I own the land. And so we need to be able to allow them to develop. They're going to be able to allow them to develop. But if they're going to do a zone change and that requires it to be modified, I do think that the least impactful zone that is in conformance with the future land use plan is what's appropriate. The future land use plan is R1. I think the zone change to the north of the apartment complex is R1. I think that's what would be appropriate for this, and really everything along that western corridor of Alvin between Orange and McCard. So I appreciate Mr. Mueller, you listening to me and allowing me to relay some of the comments that we've seen from the subdivision. I do think R1 would be appropriate. I do agree it does add additional pressure to the school system. It's just a consequence of development. I wish there was something else that we could do, but we can't force somebody to hold on to empty land against their wishes to accommodate a school that may not be ready to plan for that. So, but I do think R1, as it develops, it'll develop slowly. The school district will have time to adjust. So with that, I'll reserve the rest of my time, but I appreciate all the work that's been put into this thus far. Thank you.
Councilmember Reed?
Mayor, I think the city charter also says that the developer must listen to city council, and so I want to thank you for moving it to R1.
Councilmember Corbone?
Yeah, I'll support R1.
Okay. Mr. Chairman?
Start with Darrell.
I agree with the majority of city council. I think R1's a better fit for this.
Laney?
Yeah, I could agree with R1 as well. I think that would work.
R1 should be a good fit.
I believe the development to the north was one of the first cluster developments I looked at on the commission. I think that was that far back. I support the zone change to R1. Look forward to it coming back as either a cluster development or a PD. My only concern with going straight R1 is the size of the property and amenities for that small group of neighbors that would live there. So hopefully the market would drive that to a cluster development with some amenities locally on that side of the road for those residents. And I believe this question is for staff. The R1 zone change would have to go through first before the applicant come back for the cluster development.
Correct.
And cluster developments only go through planning and zoning, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Mayor, that's all the comments the commission has.
That's all right. Moving to staff, you have wrap-up comments to this point?
Other than we're happy with the R1, that's about it.
Okay, good. Let me move down to item 4, which let me adjourn this standalone public hearing at 9:25. And in like matter, let me open a standalone joint public hearing for zone 18-00017, and ask the chairman of the planning commission to read into the record the purpose of this hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request of Lake Park Pearland LTD, represented by James Johnson, applicant and owner, for approval of amendments to the text within the Lake Park Planned Development regarding sign regulations on approximately 21.4007 acres of land. The general location is the northeast corner of Cullen Parkway and McCard Road.
Complete. Okay. Let's move down to item 1 under this particular heading, application information, case summary. Staff report.
As stated, this request is to amend text for the sign regulations for the Lake Park Planned Development. The code conformance table, we kind of broke it down because it's only dealing with the sign language of that planned development. So the proposed sign would be in conformance with the Unified Development Code for subdivision signs. The property's already platted and it has water and sewer access. Subdivision signs are within Chapter 4 in Section 4253B6, and it states that you have a maximum of 32 square feet. The proposed sign that they are looking to do is a 20 square foot sign. Staff recommends approval of the text amendment as shown with the applicable criteria. The future land plan shown here, and then the zoning showing that the whole site is within planned development. And this is the actual exhibit that would be replacing within the Lake Park ordinance. I believe it's Section S that talks directly to signs and shows a depiction. This would change out that exhibit, allowing them to apply for a sign permit for this sign as shown. And this completes staff's report.
Okay. Move to item B, which will let the applicant make a presentation. Is the applicant here?
The applicant is not here. I spoke with them earlier today. They had a car wreck on their way from Lafayette, Louisiana to here.
This is a rather short presentation, and it's very obvious what it is, so I don't think we need a lot of discussion. So.
He did pass along that he wanted to support his project, but that he had no other people to call on this side of the Sabine River.
Okay. Can we count that as
I'm not going to speak for him, but I will pass along the message.
I think you did a good job. Thank you. Moving to item number C, is the staff have any wrap-up comments at this point?
No, sir.
Moving to the next item, persons wishing to speak for or against this proposed request. Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one individual that has turned a notification to speak on this item, Mr. John Wingler. Thank you, sir. You'll please come up, state your name and address for the purpose of the record. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm John Wingler. I live at 5418 Holly Street, Bel Air, Texas, 77401. I have property here in Pearland, Texas, 1702 Cullen Boulevard, Pearland, Texas. Anyway, it's right across the street from that project over there. I just call it that project. I prefer no signs, actually, but if he's applying for a larger sign, I'm not in favor of that at all. I want, if code says it has to be this high and he wants this high, I want it that high. But that's pretty much our only comments. If we had to do it all over again, I would have added a lot of comments. Thank you.
Good, super, I like that.
Thanks, sir. Is there any other members of the audience that would like to speak either for or against this proposed change to the PD? Is there any other members of the audience that would like to speak either for or against this proposed change to this PD? Third and final time, is there any other members of the audience that would like to speak either for or against the proposed change to this PD? Here's to be it, Mayor.
That completes it, okay. Let's give the council, planning commission, and staff an opportunity to make input their discussion, starting with Councilmember Carbone.
No comment, Mayor.
Councilmember Reed.
No comment.
Councilmember Perez.
I have no concerns about the proposed change. No additional comments, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Hernandez.
No comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Little.
I have no problem with the amendment. I think that they're going to have some high maintenance costs on that 10-foot steel tree in this corrosive environment.
Councilmember Moore.
I wouldn't be in favor of this, Mayor. That development over there is not, doesn't look all that great anyways, and now they want to put a bigger sign out there. I don't know that I'm in favor of that.
Councilmember Owens.
Does he have a sign out there presently or not? You know,
There's no sign out there right now.
so he just wants to see what code says it should be there.
Currently, there is an exhibit within the plan development document that says he gets this sign. I don't have the picture in front of me, but it's this sign. He wants this other sign. In order for him to have this sign, he has to replace the document that says that he gets this sign. And I know that was a lot of this and that, but if you follow along at home, he only gets what's in the plan development document. In order for him to get what he wants, he has to replace what's in the plan development.
It's bigger.
How much larger is this from what should be there?
This is actually smaller than what would be normally allowed within the Unified Development Code. The previous slide discussed that subdivision signs have a maximum area of 32 square foot. The proposed sign is 20 square feet. The actual sign area that says Lake Park is the only sign that's within his proposed structure.
So it doesn't presently have any sign there to attract people to come in to rent the apartments or whatever, huh?
There may be a contractor, coming soon type sign, but there's no monumental subdivision sign.
Yeah, James had tried several years to get this developed in that area, and it just never did work out on there. Really, if it's already there, I don't have a problem of them coming in with a sign in order to lease or rent the properties or whatever. You need something that can get people to come into it and make sure that they lease these properties. So I don't have a problem with it.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, sorry, Mary, sir. Mr. Wicker. Any comment?
I don't have any comments. My only concern is where the sign's placed and if drivers are going to be able to see around it whenever they exit the property. With it being 4 foot tall, that puts it right in the middle of driver eye height, sitting in a car. So as long as it's far enough back off the road so cars, when they pull up, they can see each way, I don't have a problem.
Laney, you have anything? Or I can go to Daryl first. Daryl, you have a comment? He didn't give you much time. Ask staff.
Is there an actual height limit on the signs? I know you said square footage, but what about height?
10 foot for the sign.
So
if they wanted to make a real tall, very slender, very tall,
That's
they could.
crazy. Thank you.
I don't really have an issue with the sign. I just wish there was one of these fancy documents to tie the fountain that they put on the property to what they showed us when this was approved. Because what they put in was not anywhere near even close to what they showed as this big grand vision from the corner of Cullen. If I said no, it would be for that reason. But I don't have a problem with the sign. It's a done deal. That completes our comments, Mayor.
I'll say no for you, Commissioner.
Thanks, Gary.
To complete your, okay. The discussion, staff have any wrap-up comments at this point?
No, sir.
I'm going to move down to item 4, which let me adjourn this series of joint public hearings between the Planning Commission and the City Council City of Pearland at 9:20. Now, we do have one more that we need to clarify and clean the table with before we move on to the next. Let me open a Planning and Zoning Commissions, City of Pearland, joint public special meeting, City Council, City of Pearland, and the Planning and Zoning Commission, City of Pearland. And it's called to order with the City Council and the City Planning and Zoning Commission, both in the completion. And moving to item number 4, introduce the agenda for point. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a conditional use permit application number CUP 18-00014. This is a request of Recca Engineering Incorporated, represented by John English, applicant, on behalf of Town Lake LP, represented by R West Development Company Incorporated, Renee L. McGuire, owner, for approval of conditional use permit CUP to allow for a mini warehouse self-storage use located in the general commercial GC zoning district on approximately 3.4784 acres of land. The general location is west of Town Lake Estate subdivision, fronting Euler Drive and being a part of the property addressed 3737 Main Street.
I complete that information in the record. Let's move down to item number A, which is application information case summary, staff report.
Yes, sir. This is a request for mini warehouse self-storage use. It's within general commercial, and the future land use shows business commercial. We had 2 phone calls about this, wanting more information about the request. It's generally in conformity with the conformance table, except for platting, which they will, of course, be required to do prior to applying for and getting any building permits. The property is within 2 corridor overlay districts, or the larger chunk is within 2 corridor overlay districts. The main portion that we're discussing tonight is only facing on to Euler Drive, which is corridor overlay district. Staff recommends approval of the requested CUP with conditions. It has conformity to the criteria as shown. The conditions are that a 6-foot masonry wall be made a requirement, whether the site maintains a 25-foot or 30-foot residential buffer along the north property line, and that the front elevations maintain a storefront appearance with glass as the primary facade element visible from Euler Drive. This is the site plan that was proposed. As you may remember, we've had this come to joint special meeting a couple times. We just haven't had it actually be on for discussion. So the applicant has received our comments and has taken those into redevelopment of their site plan. So they are showing a masonry wall, and they do have glass as the primary facade. We just want to make sure that that is maintained as they further develop their site plan. So what's shown here indicates the landscape buffer and shows the corridor overlay district landscaping. This is showing their layout of units. And then this is showing the elevations from Euler, from Maine, and then from Town Lake Estates, if you were looking from the property line. This shows the zoning and aerial, and then a hatched out area for where their lot would fit into the main portion of the land described. And then this shows the future lane plan indicating business and commercial. That completes staff's report.
That completes your report?
Yes, sir.
Good. Is the applicant present? Please come down. And please give your name and address and try to.
Renee McGuire, 7918 West Broadway, Pearland, Texas. Thank you. So I have 25 acres that I've had for about 23 years on 35, and this is towards the back. It's 600 feet deep. We're not likely to get any box stores or anything, so we have what you can barely see here. We're either going to start our commercial, which is zoned for the retail. We've got about 30,000 square feet initially in the front of this planned, and we decided, I see so many subdivisions that have retail backed up to it, and you have those smelly dumpsters and, of course, food places and grease traps and things like that. So I was trying to think of something that would buffer the retail that we did, and so we came up with this was the only thing that really made any sense that would have a less impact on Town Lake Estates, and which I developed, I don't know how many years ago, I guess 20-something years ago. So we're either going to build a retail in the front of it, or if we can't get the mini storage, we're just going to go ahead and put it back in the back further, because yeah, I don't know what else to do with it for right now. So this was the best thing we could come up with that would have less impact on the subdivision. It's going to be really nice. I wish you would have gotten the front, because it is going to have a storefront, and it'll blend in with a lot of the retail that we're doing in front of it. We're going to start as soon as we find out what's going to happen here. We're going to go ahead and design the retail, and I'm sure we'll be started with the retail before he gets that started. So that's my part.
Got it.
I'm John English, 5301 Hollister, Houston, Texas. Anyway, no, I just want to support what Renee was saying, but also one of the comments was about the regional detention as far as Town Lake Estates will be in this area, and so this track will drain into that facility. And also, just last time we talked, I think there were some comments from the HOA, which the owners have met with the HOA and have worked out any comments that they had.
Okay, with that information on the record, let's move on to next item, which is persons wish to speak for or against the proposed request. Councilman Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. I've received one notification of an individual that wants to speak on this item, Mr. Kevin Cole. You'll please state your name and address for the purpose of the record. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when about 30 seconds is left.
Yes, for the record, Kevin Cole, address 3808 Houston Lake Drive, also here representing the Town Lake Estates Homeowners Association as president of the board. I think we've got a couple of members from our community here as well. As a community, and I want to first state, Renee actually came to our community and our board meeting probably 6 months ago or so now, maybe 8. And showed this plan to us that long ago. So this was not something that was necessarily a surprise to us. It was several months ago to come and talk about it, which then also gave us the opportunity and to and asked her to reach out to our greater community and those directly affected that back up to the development and reach out, which she did, and had a separate board meeting with those residents present to be able to ask questions, answer questions, and those types of things. And then furthermore, Mr. Don Gill, who is the actual builder for the mini storage, came to our annual meeting a month ago and did just that, answered all questions that people had about the development. To my knowledge, from the actual use, we haven't heard anyone oppose the actual use. At our meetings, we have heard that, and they have addressed it in this latest proposal, and that is none of the unit doors, facing the residential portion. So if you'll see the elevation that backs up to Town Lake Estates, they've now cleaned that up where there's no doors on the backside. The one thing that I don't see in the staff report, and I see maybe a typo in the staff report about the 6-foot masonry wall residential buffer along the north property line. North property line would actually be Order Drive, so I think you're meaning the east property line, so that might be something that needs to be addressed in there, which they have said they're going to do that was even without that, but that's also just a city requirement in general. The only other condition that's not in here that we've talked about is, and they've talked about, and you see from the elevations here, that it's a single story. And when we're doing this, we looked at it and said, unless we own it, we can't keep anything from just not ever happening here. So to us, we're, in my word, not theirs, picking our poison. What's going to be best fit next to our neighborhood? Do we want a restaurant with grease traps and those types of things next to the neighborhood, right behind your fence? And the answer is no. None of the people who live there want that next to their neighborhood as well. At the same time, you could put in a 3 or 4 story office building here, and that could go in by right, and we wouldn't even be here tonight. So she's come here with something that's less obtrusive than even an office building peering down into the neighbors' backyards. So this is a better fit for the people that are behind there. So we would ask, because they're proposing a single story, that a condition be placed on there that it would remain a single story. I believe these folks will build what they say they're going to do, but 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years from now, if this facility is sold, that wouldn't necessarily keep somebody from tearing it down and then coming back in with a 3-4 story dry stack storage facility. So to protect those residents, they would prefer to see that one last requirement put on there of a single story. But I think everything else meets what we've talked about. Yes, drainage is an issue. The repair issues to our lake, those are internal issues that we have to have those discussions with them. But from a use, we support this use and stand behind them. And we thank them for actually coming and engaging the community.
Good, super.
Hey, sir, is there any other members of the audience that'd like to speak either for or against this proposed development? Please come up. Please state your name and address for the purpose of the record. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have about 30 seconds left.
My name is John Gilmore, live at 3812 Canyon Lake Drive, and I was late getting here, so I didn't get to fill out a form, but I'm glad to be able to speak. Our property backs up directly to this project, so we'll be directly affected by this development, and we've been there since 2014. Several years ago, another mini storage was proposed for this tract, but it was in a different location. It was more of a vertical orientation going out to 35, about 2/3 of the way down the property. And that particular project we were opposed to because it didn't really make sense as far as the overall development of the tract. But this project here that we have presented tonight, I just want to say, as someone who will be directly affected by it, we are in support of this as it is currently presented. The original plan we had concerns about, like Kevin said, there were showing doors that would be facing our property, facing to the east. And so with that revision, we're okay with that. Having the masonry wall is a great benefit. I know there's some maintenance issues that need to be worked out between the development and HOA, but those are internal things. The one-story provision would be very helpful as well. But overall, compared to what we could have in this property, I think a mini storage, I think I saw some statistics that the average vehicle count per day is like 4 per day or something like that, which is very nice. I mean, it beats having semi-trucks unloading groceries at 2 a.m., you know, if we had a grocery store or something like that. So we consider this a very good neighbor that we can live with, we can be pleased with, and with the planning that has been presented in this latest development, we can support it. And I'd also like to thank everyone involved for your openness, your willingness to work with us, and something that would greatly affect us, but that we can be very pleased to live with. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Please fill out purple form. Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to speak either for or against this proposed CUP? Anybody else in the audience who'd like to speak either for or against this proposed conditional use permit? Third and final time, anybody else in the audience would like to speak either for or against this proposed conditional use permit? Seems to be it, Mayor.
We're completed. Okay, let's move to item B. Next item, Planning Commission, City Council, and staff complete the discussion to date. Mr. Chairman?
We'll start with Daryl.
I'm okay with it. The only thing is like some of the residents brought up, I think that we ought to add the additional restriction on them that it has to stay a one-story for the, I guess, the life of the property.
Lenny? Looks like I like the idea. I'm glad that the HOA and Renee got together on this. That's good to hear. The only question I had, I guess, for the HOA, or Kevin, if you could, we've talked about, or maybe staff as well, we had another development where there was a shared fence and the developer wanted to put in a masonry fence against existing homes. Does the HOA have a strip down that right away, or is it individual homes? Has that been worked out with the individual property owners, or will that be an issue that has to be addressed in any way?
That way it can be on the record. It hasn't been worked out specifically. The HOA, to my knowledge, doesn't have a strip along their buffering, so it's individual lots. The perimeter fence, it's kind of unique. We have the masonry fence along Euler Drive and Pearland Parkway. Those are maintained and owned and maintained by the HOA. The wood fences that back up to here and on the, I guess, far south side are owned and maintained by the property owner. So that's a big question, and John alluded to it, and that is, you know, with the requirement that the developer has to put in a 6-foot masonry fence, you know, you do one of two things. Either you put it up against the other, or you take down one and leaving this. Then it comes to who maintains that fence forevermore. And, you know, and that's something that we have to work out, obviously, with the adjacent property owner. But, you know, it's our understanding that if it's required by the city, it ought to be borne, you know, by the maintenance of it. But that, again, that's something not necessarily to the use, but how we're going to have that type of an agreement between us and the developer of the project. So,
thank you. And I believe on the last one that this was an issue with, it wasn't an issue at all. I believe it was built without, the fences were taken down and replaced with the masonry fence. That was off of Kirby and 59. Yeah.
The last one I remember was Kroger, the Kroger site. The masonry fence was offset from the residential fence.
Okay, I just wanted to bring it up if it needed to be addressed in the CUP. This would be the time to do it. But The only other question I had was what defines a one-story building as far as height? Is there a height maximum that we're looking at?
General commercial, I believe, off the top of my head, has a maximum height of 45 foot. I would have to look it up just because I don't remember off the top of my head, but I want to say it's 45 foot.
So if there were, the only thing I would think needed to be in the CUP was what that one story is. If that's an issue for the HOA, it needs to be addressed in the CUP before it's approved. I'll move on if anyone, no further comments from the commission. Mayor, that completes the commission's questions.
That completes your, okay. Move to council discussion. Start with Councilman Owens.
I don't have a problem with it at all, since people that live in that area come up here and they support it. I guess y'all can work out the deal on the fence. I know we got that same thing here close to where you live, Mayor, that the residential fence is there and the commercial come in and put their fence, and we had to come in and take care of the distance in between there. And that's not something we'd like to do. But I don't have a problem with it since,
Yeah, same. I mean, the residents there support this. I think it's something that's good for that area with the school being there. It doesn't impact a lot of traffic. I mean, storage unit facilities usually have very, very low traffic. So it'll be a great addition to that area, and the residents supporting it, that's even better. My only issue would be going forward would be the lighting at the facility. Mr. Gilmore alluded that he backs up to this property. A lot of times when facilities like this move into an area where they back up to residential property, they put up lighting because of security issues, and then you got light pollution into the backyard of somebody's home. So if the lighting's going to be okay in that area, then it makes it even better. But I don't have an issue with it.
Okay, Councilman Little.
For the reasons Councilman Owens and Moore stated, I don't have a problem with it, and I commend you guys on the way you work together to get the issues resolved.
Hernandez.
I have no issues with it, but also wanted to commend you for, sounds like a phenomenal job talking with the HOA and working this out. So thank you for that.
Okay. Council Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, appreciate y'all working with them. If I could trouble you to give the mic and offer some thoughts on, would there be any objection to adding a condition to this CUP that limits the to one story and limits the height of the buildings?
And maybe address lighting too.
We don't have any objection with limiting it to a one-story. As far as lighting, the only thing that's on the back of the building is going to be that 25 or 30-foot reserve. There's no parking, there's no really need for any lights unless it's just security to make sure nobody's walking down behind it to rob the houses. So there's no reason for us. So I think if we do lights, it would be something we might get with the homeowners that wouldn't harm them, but might keep people from running down behind the building and going over the fence to do something. But then it's going to be 6-foot masonry. So we're open. We don't really need lights in the back, but for the safety and security of the homes that are back there, it might be something we want to look at and talk about.
So a couple of things. My understanding, and having a conversation about this with some of the members of the HOA before the last presentation was come in, the condition, which was stated before, was an issue with the doors of some of the facilities facing the subdivision. Staff, I don't see a condition in the CUP that specifically requires that. Right now it says conditioned approval on the 6-inch masonry wall being required, whether the site maintains 25 or 30 residential buffer. elevation, storefront, appearance with glass and facade. So would we need to amend it to add a one-story condition? Would we need to amend it to add a condition that we have no doorways in the CUP that face the subdivision? And then, Ms. McGuire, if you would be willing to have a 1-foot candle limitation at the property line as part of the CUP, where you can put lights back there, but minimizes the intensity at the property line?
Sure, that wouldn't be a problem.
Okay, so when in the next meeting, if you don't have any objection, I'll offer an amendment to the CUP for all of those conditions to be added.
And we might just maybe also put the kind of lights that when there's someone out there, there shouldn't be anybody back there. And if there is somebody going back there, then maybe they come on at that time.
So motion sensor with a one.
Yeah, that might be for security reasons for the houses. They're not going to, I think, break into since it's going to be block and plaster, they're not going to, our concern, and they're going to break into us, but just the concern of people in that strip that may, get in there at night, because it's not manned at night, and go back there, to get into the houses. So maybe just for security, something that was motion censored for the lights that would be back there for the security.
Okay, I think that would be superior to requiring you to add the site plan to be a condition of the CUP, which means if you have to make any modifications to the site plan for any reason, now in the future, you got to come back and amend the CUP. Put the general provisions in there. If you're fine, they're fine. I think that could meet everybody's needs.
Sure, we're fine.
Good. Councilor Reed? Councilor Carone?
Do we need to define the height of 1 story, or is that something?
I believe height is defined in the UDC for a 1-story building, so it won't exceed the 45, just based on the UDC, 45 feet.
45 foot's 4 stories.
The architects over here and the builder of the project has said an 18-foot height would be more than sufficient to do what they need to do and have any facade, coming up above it, like a parapet or anything like that. So they said, I believe, 18 feet would be more than sufficient for their needs. A 45-foot height would actually allow you a 4-story building. So that's.
So I would ask Councilman Perez when do you amend the motion to include a height limitation of 18 feet?
I'd say a height limitation of 18 feet, sans parapet, gives them a little freedom to mask the equipment on the roof. Would that be sufficient? 18-foot height limitation, sans the parapet, so it allows you some room to navigate to mask the any equipment that's on the roof. 18-foot height limitation, sans the parapet, so that you have some room. I can limit 20 if the HOA doesn't object.
Herman Thun, 4009 Merrimack, Austin. I'm the architect. A couple things. First of all, there got to be zero illumination across the property line from any property. That's by law, okay? Number two, 18 feet would work. There is nothing on the roof. No equipment on any of the roofs.
So is 18 foot good? Okay. I think that's it, Mayor.
Complete your comments. Let's move to item 3, which would be staff wrap-up on this item.
I was going to wrap up the conditions, but it sounds like they've been taken care of, so no further.
Good. Moving in our agenda to item C, at this point by our procedure, this changed from a joint special meeting to a city council action item. And item 1 is the considering possible action resolution. I'll ask Councilmember Hernandez if he'll present this for our council consideration.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action resolution number R2018-CUP 18-00014. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion by the city council?
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to amend the motion to add a 1 foot candle intensity limitation at the property line with motion sensor lights only along the perimeter of the property. Also add a condition that no doorways to the storage facilities can face the adjacent subdivision, and also add a one-story limitation with an 8-foot height limit. 18, I'm sorry.
That's your motion.
I second.
We have a second? We do have a second. Any discussion on this item at this point? Hearing none, Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Hernandez, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez, how do you vote?
Yes on the amendment, yes.
Councilmember Little? Aye. Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0 as amended.
And the amendment passed. We still need to pass.
We now have an amended motion on the table. And council have any question or comment about this item? Amended motion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, we do have amended motion on the table.
Councilmember Hernandez, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0 as amended.
Great. With that information and recorded, let me move down to item 5, which will let me adjourn this city council business item at 10:06.